Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Before we discuss our topics, let's have a quick would you rather activity. I'll give you two choices and I want you to choose the one you prefer. There's no right or wrong answer. Okay, ready? Okay, so our first would you rather question is number one. Would you rather watch a short English video and tell me what you understood? Or read an English passage and answer questions about it and why? Okay, very good. So, our second would you rather question is would you rather learn English through our real life situation like ordering food or applying for a job or practice English through grammar exercises and worksheets? Which one would help you more? Uh-huh. Okay. And now let's proceed to our third would you rather question. So, would you rather create your own short English story, video, or social media post, or answer a set of English exercises with one correct answer? And why? Uh huh. Okay, I get your point. So, thank you. So, that's it, everyone. So, thank you for participating for our activity.
So, what did you notice about our answers? Not everyone chose the same options, right? That shows us that learners have different preferences and ways of learning. Because of this, our materials should provide varied activities rather than relying on only one method. Our questions also included real life situations, showing that materials should be relevant and useful to learners. At the same time, asking you to choose and explain your answers encourages self investment because you are actively connecting the lesson to your own experiences and preferences. And even though this was just a simple activity, you had to think, make decisions, express yourself, and interact with others. This shows how materials can encourage intellectual, emotional, and social involvement. So, overall, effective materials should not just make students practice, they should make them interested, involved, and able to use what they learn meaningfully. That's all. Thank you.
Pleasant day to everyone. So my name is Marvels M. Cavante, and in this video, we are going to be introducing you to the different principles of second language acquisition and their relevance towards the development of materials. So for my part, I am going to be discussing the principle materials should achieve impact. So when we hear the word impact, what usually crosses our mind? And what does the statement, materials should achieve impact, actually mean? That's right. So when we say that materials should achieve impact, it means that the learning materials we use should catch the attention of the learners. It should stimulate their curiosity and make them interested in learning. Materials should not simply contain information or exercises. They should create an experience that makes students want to participate and learn. So, for example, imagine that we are teaching English vocabulary, and instead of simply giving students a list of words and asking them to memorize their meaning, we could use pictures, short situations, games, or examples that are connected to the things that they actually encounter in everyday life. Doing this actually makes the material more interesting and more meaningful to them. So, the whole idea of this principle is that effective materials should leave an impression on learners. They should make the learners think, feel, participate, or even become curious enough to explore the language further on their own. And this is especially important in second language acquisition because learning a language requires continuous exposure and practice. And with that being said, if the materials are boring or feel irrelevant, learners may eventually lose motivation. But when materials are engaging and meaningful, learners are more likely to pay attention, participate actively, and actually remember what they have learned. So, in simpler terms, materials should not just teach, they should make learners actually want to learn. That is what it means for materials to achieve an impact.
What is being taught should be perceived by learners as relevant and useful. Good day, everyone. It's me again, Lizelle. So let's proceed to our second principle. So, our second principle is perceived as relevant and useful. So, it tells us that learners will only put effort into learning something if they believe it matters to them. So, it is not enough for us teachers to think a topic is important. The learners themselves must see how it connects to their daily lives, their goals, or their interest. So if they think the lesson is useless or unrelated to what they need, they will easily lose motivation and forget what they learned. For example, instead of teaching grammar using sentences about foreign places they have never visited, we can use topics like Cebu fiestas, online shopping, applying for a job, or talking to friends. When learners see that what they are studying helps them communicate better, express themselves, or prepare for their future, they will pay more attention and learn much faster. In short, materials must answer the questions: why do I need to learn this? When learners see the use, they will value the learning. So that's it, everyone, for our second principle. So thank you for listening.
Good day, everyone. Today, we will discuss about the fifth principle of second language acquisition relevant to material development. The discussion will answer why learner self-investment matters. This approach offers several advantages in the lens of motivation, autonomy, and deeper learning. Motivation stated that materials that ask learners to set personal goals, track progress, and choose tasks increases intrinsic motivation and task persistence of the learners. Second is autonomy. Options, menus, and branching tasks let learners control pace and path, essential for self-directed practice and identity formation as language users. The third one is deeper learning. Reflection prompts, production tasks, and spaced retrieval encourage meaningful processing and long-term retention. So, to wrap things up, materials should not only present input, they must require learners to invest time, choice, and reflection to convert input into internalized competence. Another point to consider is designing for engagement. Practical strategies. As we all know, SLR principles guides us to present the best strategies for learners in the future. It highlighted the goal-oriented tasks, choice and differentiation, reflection and evidence, social accountability, and scaffolded autonomy. The first one is goal-oriented task. It focuses on short, personalized objectives that is Use 10 target verbs in a paragraph, then give immediate purpose and measurable outcomes. The second is choice and differentiation. Offer parallel task paths such as listen to summarize or analyze to perform. So in that way, learners pick challenges matched to readiness and interest. Third is reflection and evidence. Embed quick self-assessment rubrics, learner logs, and artifacts such as recordings or portfolios, so progress is visible and attributable to effort. The fourth one is social accountability. Pair work, peer review, and public showcases create gentle pressure to prepare and invest while building community support. Lastly is the scaffolded autonomy. Start with guided tasks, gradually remove supports, and provide tools like checklists, exemplars, feedback rubrics, so learners can internalize self-regulation skills.
The next principle is take into account that learners differ in learning styles. So, based on the principles of second language acquisition or SLA defined by experts like Brian Tomlinson, the principle that learners differ in learning styles means that language instructional materials must be varied, flexible, and multisensory to effectively reach every student in a classroom. Because no two brains process a new language the same way. Static or one size fits all materials inherently alienate a large portion of the class. To apply this SLA principle to materials development, textbook writers and educators must cater to four primary learning styles. The first one is visual learners. Materials must include graphic organizers, color coded grammar structures, contextual photographs, and clear typographic layouts. The next primary learning style is auditory learners. So materials must be incorporate listening tracks, spoken word poetry, podcasts, and opportunities for peer to peer discussion. The next one is kinesthetic or tactile learners. Materials must feature hands on tasks, movable word, guards, role plays, physical classroom games, or interactive digital interfaces. Lastly, analytic versus global learners. So materials must balance structured, rule-based grammar drilling with immersive for analytic minds and whole text storytelling and communicative tasks for global minds. Ultimately, materials development grounded in SLA principles treats diversity in learning styles not as an obstacle, but as a blueprint. By offering multiple entry points to the same linguistic concept, the materials reduce cognitive anxiety, increase motivation, and ensure that every student can internalize the target language through their own natural processing strengths.
Good morning, everyone. I am JN Segovia. Today, I will discuss the principle number 5 of language learning materials development, which is to encourage intellectual, aesthetic, and emotional involvement. So, this principle means that learning a language should involve more than just memorizing words or following grammar rules. Students should be given opportunities to think, appreciate creativity, and express their emotions through language. And now let us talk about intellectual involvement. This focuses on making students to think, analyze, and express their ideas. For example, after reading a story, the teachers asked, "What would you do if you were the main character?" So the students explain and defend their answers. And the intellectual involvement, the teachers encouraging students to think critically and share their ideas. Another example is teachers can ask questions that require students to explain, analyze, or give their opinions. Second is the aesthetic involvement. So here this focuses on helping students appreciate the beauty and creativity of language. For example, students listen to a song and identify interesting expressions, metaphors, or creative language used in the lyrics. In the aesthetic involvement, it means helping students to appreciate the beauty and creativity of language through poems, stories, songs, and literature. And the last one is the emotional involvement. So this focuses on allowing students to express their feelings and connect lessons to their experiences. For example, students write a short paragraph about a memorable experience and describe how it made them feel. So in that way, they can express their feelings and connect their experiences. Another example is after reading an emotional story, students share their character they relate to and explain why. So this means in the emotional involvement, it allows students to connect what they are learning with their own feelings and experiences. So when students can express themselves personally, they become more interested and connected to the lesson. In short, effective language learning should involve the mind, appreciation, and emotions. When students are encouraged to think, enjoy, and feel through language, learning becomes more meaningful and engaging. So the easiest way to remember the three, when we say intellectual, to think, aesthetic, appreciate, and emotional, feelings. So that would be all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Christine Talinting, and today I will be discussing the sixth principle of second language acquisition that is relevant to materials development. Before I discuss my assigned part, let me briefly recap the principles that were discussed by my group mates. We learned that materials should create an impact on learners, be relevant and useful to them, encourage learners' self-investment, consider differences in learning style, and maximize learning potential through intellectual, aesthetic, and emotional involvement. Principle 6. Materials should not rely too much on controlled practice. This principle means that learning materials should not rely too much on activities where learners only follow a fixed pattern or choose one correct answer. Practice is useful because it helps learners understand and practice new language forms, especially grammar and vocabulary. However, if materials rely on it too much, learners may have fewer opportunities to use the language freely and communicate their own ideas.
awareness. For example, instead of only asking learners to complete sentences such as she blank to school every day with the correct answer goes, the material can also ask learners to talk about their daily routines or create sentences using the target grammar. Another example is vocabulary. Instead of only matching words with their meanings, learners can be asked to use the new words in a short conversation, describe a picture, or create their own sentences. So, the main idea of this principle is that controlled practice should be balanced with activities that allow learners to use the language more freely and meaningfully. This helps learners become more independent and confident in using the second language. That would be all for my part. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Jethro Manatad, and I will be discussing one of the principles of second language acquisitions that is important in developing learning materials. One of them is the provide opportunities for outcome feedback. So, what do we mean by outcome feedback? So, outcome feedback is the information that learners receive after they perform task or activity, which helps them understand whether their communication was successful or not. In simple words, students should be given opportunities to see the results of what they have done and understand what they can improve. So, for example, imagine that I asked you to give directions to your classmates on how to get from school to the school gate, and you will say, go straight, turn left, and the school gate is beside the office. So your classmate follows your directions and successfully reaches the school gate. And that successful result is an example of outcome. Very good. So you learn that your instructions were understandable because your classmate was able to follow them. So what if your classmate goes in a wrong direction? That also gives useful feedback. It tells you that your instructions may not have been clear enough, so you can try again and improve them. So why it is important to have outcome feedback? So outcome feedback is important because language learning is not only about knowing grammar and vocabulary. Learners also need to know whether they can successfully use language to accomplish a real purpose. For example, instead of simply asking students to memorize vocabulary about food, we can give them a real life task. So, for example, imagine you're ordering food at a restaurant and ask for the food you want and tell the waiter your preferences. So, after that activity, students can see whether they were able to successfully communicate their order. If the waiter or partner understand the order correctly, students know that their communication worked. So, when creating learning materials, we should include activities where students can do something meaningful and see the results of their language use. So, for example, an activity, students work in pairs. Student A has a map while student B has a destination. A student A must give directions using English. So the outcome is student B follows the directions and identifies the correct destinations. If student B reaches the correct place, student A knows that the instructions were clear. If not, they can discuss what went wrong and try again. So, class, remember that provide opportunities for outcome feedback means giving learners learners activities where they can use the language for a real purpose and then see whether their communications successfully achieve that purpose. It is not only about telling students what is correct or wrong. It is all about allowing them to experience the results of their communication, recognize what worked, and identify what did not work so that they can improve their language through practice. So, in short, use language, see the results, learn from it, and try again. So, that would be all for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something today.